Book 1, Chapter 5 of the late Mr. Jonathan Wild the Great. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Dennis Sayers. The late Mr. Jonathan Wild the Great by Henry Fielding. Book 1, Chapter 5. A dialogue between young Master Wild and Count Ruse, which, having extended to the rejoinder, had a very quiet, easy, and natural conclusion. One evening, after the Miss Snaps were retired to rest, the Count thus addressed himself to the young Wild. "You cannot, I apprehend, Mr. Wild, be such a stranger to your own great capacity as to be surprised when I tell you I have often viewed with a mixture of astonishment and concern your shining qualities confined to a sphere where they can never reach the eyes of those who would introduce them properly into the world, and raise you to an eminence where you may blaze out to the admiration of all men. I assure you I am pleased with my captivity when I reflect I am likely to owe to it an acquaintance, and I hope friendship, with the greatest genius of my age; and what is still more, when I indulge my vanity with a prospect of drawing from obscurity, pardon the expression, such talents as were, I believe, never before like to have been buried in it; for I make no question but, at my discharge from confinement, which will now soon happen, I shall be able to introduce you into company where you may reap the advantage of your superior parts. I will bring you acquainted, sir, with those who, as they are capable of setting a true value on such qualifications, so they will have it both in their power and inclination to prefer you for them. Such an introduction is the only advantage you want, without which your merit might be your misfortune; for those abilities which would entitle you to honour and profit in a superior station may render you only obnoxious to danger and disgrace in a lower." Mr. Wild answered, "Sir, I am not insensible of my obligations to you, as well for the overvalue you have set on my small abilities, as for the kindness you express in offering to introduce me among my superiors. I must own my father hath often persuaded me to push myself into the company of my betters; but, to say the truth, I have an awkward pride in my nature, which is better pleased with being at the head of the lowest class than at the bottom of the highest. Permit me to say, though the idea may be somewhat coarse, I had rather stand on the summit of a dunghill than at the bottom of a hill in paradise. I have always thought it signifies little into what rank of life I am thrown, provided I make a great figure therein, and should be as well satisfied with exerting my talents well at the head of a small party or gang as in the command of a mighty army; for I am far from agreeing with you that great parts are often lost in a low situation. On the contrary, I am convinced it is impossible that they should be lost. I have often persuaded myself that there were not fewer than 1,000 in Alexander's troops capable of performing what Alexander himself did; but because such spirits were not elected or destined to an imperial command, are we therefore to imagine they came off without a booty, or that they contented themselves with the share in common with their comrades? Surely no. In civil life, doubtless, the same genius, the same endowments, have often composed the statesman and the prig, for so we call what the vulgar name a thief. The same parts, the same actions often promote men to the head of superior societies, which raise them to the head of lower. And where is the essential difference, if the one ends on Tower Hill and the other at Tyburn? Hath the block any preference to the gallows, or the axe to the halter, but was given them by the ill-guided judgment of men? You will pardon me, therefore, if I am not so hastily inflamed with the common outside of things, nor join the general opinion in preferring one state to another. A guinea is as valuable in a leathern as in an embroidered purse, and a cod's head is a cod's head still, whether in a pewter or a silver dish. The count replied as follows: What you have now said doth not lessen my idea of your capacity, but confirms my opinion of the ill effect of bad and low company. Can any man doubt whether it is better to be a great statesman or a common thief? I have often heard that the devil used to say, where or to whom I know not, that it was better to reign in hell than to be a valet de chambre in heaven. And perhaps he was in the right, but sure if he had had the choice of reigning in either, he would have chosen better. The truth therefore is, that by low conversation we contract a greater awe for high things than they deserve. We decline great pursuits, not from contempt, but despair. The man who prefers the high road to a more reputable way of making his fortune doth it because he imagines the one easier than the other. But you yourself have asserted, and with undoubted truth, that the same abilities qualify you for undertaking, and the same means will bring you to your end in both journeys. As in music, it is the same tune, whether they play it in a higher or a lower key. To instance, in some particulars, is it not the same qualification which enables this man to hire himself as a servant, and to get into the confidence and secrets of his master in order to rob him, and that to undertake trusts of the highest nature with a design to break and betray them? Is it less difficult by false tokens to deceive a shopkeeper into the delivery of his goods, which you afterwards run away with, than to impose upon him by outward splendor and the appearance of fortune into a credit by which you gain and he loses 20 times as much? Doth it not require more dexterity in the fingers to draw out a man's purse from his pocket, or to take a lady's watch from her side without being perceived of any, an excellence in which, without flattery, I am persuaded you have no superior, than to cog a die or to shuffle a pack of cards? Is not as much art, as many excellent qualities, required to make a pimping porter at a common bawdy house as would enable a man to prostitute his own or his friend's wife or child? Doth it not ask as good a memory, as nimble an invention, as steady a countenance, to forswear yourself in Westminster Hall, as would furnish out a complete tool of state, and perhaps a statesman himself? It is needless to particularize every instance. In all we shall find that there is a nearer connection between high and low life than is generally imagined, and that a highwayman is entitled to more favor with the great than he usually meets with. If therefore, as I think I have proved, the same parts which qualify a man for eminence in a low sphere qualify him likewise for eminence in a higher, sure it can be no doubt in which he would choose to exert them. Ambition, without which no one can be a great man, will immediately instruct him, in your own phrase, to prefer a hill in paradise to a dunghill. Nay, even fear, a passion the most repugnant to greatness, will show him how much more safely he may indulge himself in the free and full exertion of his mighty abilities in the higher than in the lower rank, since experience teaches him that there is a crowd oftener in 1 year at Tyburn than on Tower Hill in a century. Mr. Wild, with much solemnity, rejoined, that the same capacity which qualifies a milken, footnote, a housebreaker, a bridle cull, footnote, a highwayman, or a buttock and file, footnote, a shoplifter, terms used in the Cant Dictionary, to arrive at any degree of eminence in his profession, would likewise raise a man in what the world esteem a more honourable calling, I do not deny. Nay, in many of your instances it is evident that more ingenuity, more art, are necessary to the lower than the higher proficients. If, therefore, you had only contended that every prig might be a statesman, if he pleased, I had readily agreed to it. But when you conclude that it is his interest to be so, that ambition would bid him take that alternative. In a word, that a statesman is greater or happier than a prig. I must deny my assent. But in comparing these two together, we must carefully avoid being misled by the vulgar, erroneous estimation of things, for mankind err in disquisitions of this nature, as physicians do, who, in considering the operations of a disease, have not a due regard to the age and complexion of the patient. The same degree of heat which is common in this constitution may be a fever in that. In the same manner, that which may be riches or honour to me may be poverty or disgrace to another. For all these things are to be estimated by relation to the person who possesses them. A bounty of £10 looks as great in the eye of a bridle cull, and gives as much happiness to his fancy as that of as many thousands to the statesman, and doth not the former lay out his acquisitions in whores and fiddles with much greater joy and mirth than the latter in palaces and pictures? What are the flattery, the false compliments of his gang to the statesman, when he himself must condemn his own blunders, and is obliged, against his will, to give fortune the whole honour of success? What is the pride resulting from such sham applause, compared to the secret satisfaction which a prig enjoys in his mind in reflecting on a well contrived and well executed scheme? Perhaps, indeed, the greater danger is on the prig's side, but then you must remember that the greater honour is so too. When I mention honour, I mean that which is paid them by their gang, for that weak part of the world which is vulgarly called the wise see both in a disadvantageous and disgraceful light, and as the prig enjoys, and merits too, the greater degree of honour from his gang, so doth he suffer the less disgrace from the world, who think his misdeeds, as they call them, sufficiently at last punished with a halter, which at once puts an end to his pain and infamy, whereas the other is not only hated in power, but detested and contemned at the scaffold, and future ages vent their malice on his fame, while the other sleeps quiet and forgotten. Besides, let us a little consider the secret quiet of their consciences. How easy is the reflection of having taken a few shillings or pounds from a stranger, without any breach of confidence, or perhaps any great harm to the person who loses it, compared to that of having betrayed a public trust, and ruined the fortunes of thousands, perhaps of a great nation. How much braver is an attack on the highway than at a gaming table, and how much more innocent the character of a B dy house than a C T pimp. He was eagerly proceeding, when, casting his eyes on the count, he perceived him to be fast asleep. Wherefore, having first picked his pocket of 3 shillings, then gently jogged him in order to take his leave, and promised to return to him the next morning to breakfast, they separated. The count retired to rest, and Master Wild to a night cellar. End of Part 1, Chapter 5, read by Dennis Sayers in Modesto, California for LibriVox.